Trump's defense in the election interference cases, where he argues and his lawyers argue that he enjoys executive privilege or immunity at the time the January 6th riots took place. Well, then that means that he has the immunity that presidents typically enjoy. He also kind of fails to answer what Sotomayor is asking about in a way that makes her pleased with his take, right?
Trump's lawyers. The president can order assassinations and rob banks as official duties. The Supreme Court, are you kidding me right now? The Supremes just delivered a massive blow to Trump's immunity fantasy, and his reaction was exactly what you'd expect, a total meltdown. Remember when Donnie thought he was untouchable? Those days are officially over. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. The Supreme Court turned into something between a comedy club and a classroom full of disappointed teachers when Trump's legal team showed up with their immunity fantasy. These 9 justices, who've heard every legal argument under the sun, couldn't believe what Trump's lawyers were trying to sell them. This crazy idea that presidents can basically do whatever they want without consequences. The justices weren't having any of it.
Justice Sonia Sotomayor grilled Trump's attorney John Sawyer on the notion of granting presidents absolute immunity.
A corrupt person, and he orders the military or orders someone to assassinate him. Is that within his official acts that for which he can get immunity?
Previously, Sawyer had argued that the president could order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate one of his political rivals and not face any consequences for it.
Justice Sotomayor went straight for the jugular with what might be the most brutal hypothetical in Supreme Court history. She asked if a president could order Navy SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival and still claim immunity, but she didn't stop there. She kept going with organizes a military coup to hold on to power immune, takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon immune. Immune, immune, immune. You could practically hear Trump's lawyers sweating through their expensive suits. The other justices piled on with their own ridiculous scenarios that exposed just how dangerous Trump's argument really was. Could a president rob a bank and classify it as official presidential cash collection? What about taking bribes for ambassadorships? With each absurd example, Trump's legal team fumbled around like they forgot there was a test that day. They couldn't give straight answers without completely destroying their own case. The funniest part? Even the justices Trump himself appointed weren't buying what he was selling. Turns out putting someone on the Supreme Court doesn't mean they'll throw the Constitution in the trash just to make you happy.
In Donald Trump's federal election interference trial, one of the last chances to hold him accountable for the crimes of January 6th before the upcoming election.
To authorize the prosecution of a president for his official acts would open a Pandora's box from which this nation may never recover.
His lawyers stood before the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, probably the second most important court in all the land, and before the nation and those 3 judges argued that a president can effectively do whatever he wants.
What a concept. Brett Kavanaugh showed surprising independence, essentially telling Trump, sorry boss, but this argument is garbage. Loyalty to the Constitution beat loyalty to the Orange Man, and you just know that made Trump's blood pressure spike through the roof. When the verdict finally came down 6-3 against Trump, it confirmed what was obvious from those oral arguments. Most of the justices thought Trump's immunity claims were completely bonkers. The majority opinion, written by Chief Justice Roberts himself, contained the apparently revolutionary concept that the president is not above the law. Shocking, I know. Who would have thought that in America, presidents aren't actually kings who can do whatever they want? The whole spectacle was a masterclass in judicial smackdown. The justices methodically dismantled this fantasy world where presidents can classify any action, no matter how corrupt or criminal, as official business and escape all consequences. It was like watching someone try to argue that the sky is green while standing outside on a clear blue day, painfully awkward and doomed from the start. While the justices were busy demolishing Trump's immunity fantasy, his own lawyer decided to save them some trouble by grabbing a pen and popping it himself. In what might be the most expensive legal whoopsie in history, Trump's attorney accidentally torpedoed their entire case with a single slip of the tongue.
As a matter of constitutional bedrock American law, there can be no criminal accountability for anything he does, no matter how violent or evil.
Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival who was not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution?
If he were impeached and convicted first. And
So your answer is no.
As his lawyer was forced to concede having his political opponents murdered.
Could a president order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? That's an official act in order to SEAL Team 6.
Imagine spending millions on legal fees only to have your lawyer score the winning touchdown for the other team. That's exactly what happened in this Supreme Court disaster. See, Trump's whole defense strategy boiled down to one simple idea. Everything a president does is official business, and therefore untouchable by those pesky laws that regular humans have to follow. It was already a stretch, but then came the moment that made lawyers everywhere cringe so hard they pulled muscle. Trump's attorney accidentally admitted that some of Trump's actions as president were actually private and not covered by immunity at all. Oops. The justices pounced on this verbal gift faster than Trump on a bucket of KFC. Suddenly, they were firing questions like, so which actions are official and which are private? The poor lawyer looked like he'd just accidentally sent a screenshot of his browser history to his entire contact list. There was no taking it back. What followed was the legal equivalent of watching someone walk into a glass door repeatedly. Trump's team tried desperately to backpedal, creating a series of exchanges so awkward they could make a middle school dance look smooth by comparison. The justices weren't having it though. Every attempt to clarify only dug the hole deeper, with the legal team tap dancing and twisting themselves into human pretzels, trying to explain which presidential actions should be immune and which shouldn't. You could practically hear the face palms echoing through the marble halls of the Supreme Court. The more Trump's lawyers tried to explain, the worse it got. Each distinction they made just further undermined their core argument about absolute immunity. It was like watching someone try to put out a fire with gasoline while insisting they're actually using water. Meanwhile, you just know Trump was probably rage tweeting from his gold toilet, watching his legal defense crumble faster than a sandcastle at high tide. His lawyers were supposed to be presenting a united front of presidential untouchability, but instead they were busy giving the justices ammunition to use against them. And there you have it, folks. After the Supreme Court's bombshell, America's favorite orange crybaby has been doing exactly what we expected, throwing a full-blown tantrum on social media and in fundraising emails, playing the victim card harder than a professional poker player. Classic Trump, painting himself as the target of some grand conspiracy whenever the law catches up with him. What's next on Trump's to-do list? Probably firing off all-caps Truth Social posts while watching Fox News in his bathrobe. But this time, his usual playbook might not work. The clock's ticking, and unlike his TV show, he can't just point and say, "You're fired," to the Supreme Court.